Welcome to the Philosopher and the Monk podcast.
Hello. Yes, today we have a very special guest. His name is Fred LaMotte. He's a non-dual poet, an amazing, incredible non-dual poet. His new book coming out this April of 2022 called The Nectar of this Breath. And James has read me many poems over the years from Mr. LaMotte, and there's the title.
The
Beautiful
Nectar
cover.
of the Breath. Yes.
That's a beautiful cover. And James, you're very familiar with Mr. LaMotte?
Yes.
You have some history?
Yes. Good seeing you, Fred. Great
to be here, James. I can finally say I've been on. I can finally say I know what a podcast is now.
I just wanted to mention Fred's, you're a college chaplain, right? Interfaith chaplain, instructor of world religions. You have degrees from Yale University and Princeton Theological Seminary. And I heard you teach some philosophy classes.
Yeah, my world religions course that I teach is under the auspices of philosophy. So I don't consider myself a philosopher in the Western sense because it's too intellectual for me.
Right.
And but I appreciate it and do love some of the great philosophers. I tend more towards, in the Western tradition, I tend more towards Meister Eckhart and Teilhard de Chardin and barking dogs and things like that.
And your dogs, I think you have poodles, right? Are they poodles?
Yeah, I hate to say it because I once thought that real men don't have poodles, but and we got poodles because they're hyperallergenic, and my wife is allergic to dogs except for poodles, and wow, they're so cool.
And Schopenhauer, right? Schopenhauer's dogs were all poodles.
And John Steinbeck?
Oh,
Poodle.
Yeah. Charlie. Travels with Charlie.
I read that book. That was an amazing book.
Yeah. And Schopenhauer, I think, named every poodle Atman. Every one of them.
Well, they're all the same one. So.
Yeah, they're the same one. Oh, Fred, I just wanted to read something. The first thing I ever read by you, if you don't mind, you had written this. I don't know if it was just a post on Facebook or if it was from a book, but it was a great way for me to start my day every day. Once I read this, it stuck with me, and it was just the perfect mantra in the morning. Wow. And you wrote, "This is my spiritual discipline. I give myself permission to eat whatever is delicious. I act my age, never one moment old. I vow to dance with the perfect stranger. Every morning I gaze inside for an hour, smiling at the radiant mirror of my heart. Then I go out in the world to embrace my 7 billion lovers, satisfying each one with a feast of light, a taste of wine from the barrel of foolishness." That's when I was hooked.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that back to me. So after we finish, you'll have to send me that in an email because I don't think I have it.
I'm sure.
Thank you.
And would you like to start with a poem or?
Sure. Hope it works here because I don't have them all memorized. So now this poem has an interesting history. It's been read at Esalen Institute by Stephen Levine, who's a great Buddhist teacher, and I didn't even know it. Somebody who was there told me about it, and it's been turned into a video by this New Zealand artist, and it's been translated into Korean. It's published in a Korean book called Poems of Mindfulness. And I first published it in a journal of interfaith journal called Tiferet journal. But now it's going to be in the book that's about to be published.
Oh, great.
Been around. It's called Ancestry.
Ancestry.
My DNA results came back. Just as I suspected, my great-great-grandfather was a monarch butterfly. Much of who I am is still wriggling under a stone. I am part larva, but part hummingbird too. There is dinosaur tar in my bone marrow. My golden hair sprang out of a meadow in Palestine. Genghis Khan is my fourth cousin, but I didn't get his dimples. My loins are loaded with banyan seeds from Sri Lanka, but I descended from Ravana, not Ram. My uncle is a mastodon. There are traces of white people in my saliva. 3.7 billion years ago, I swirled in hydrogen dust, dreaming of a planet overgrown with lingams and yonis. More recently, say 60,000 BC, I walked on hairy paws across a land bridge, joining Sweden to Botswana. I am the bastard of the sun and moon. I can no longer hide my heritage of raindrops and cougar scat. My mud was molded with your grandmother's tears. I was the brother from another tribe who marched you to the sea and sold you. I was the merchant from Savannah and the cargo of blackness. I was the chain. Admit it, you have wings, vast and crystal like mine, like mine. You have sweat, dark and salty like mine. We do not ripen on each other's breath. Don't pretend we do not ripen on each other's breath. Don't pretend we didn't come here to forgive.
Wow.
Amazing. Amazing. You know, I was thinking about this. Your poems are like, and I know this is a word all three of us share, they're like astonishment medicine.
Oh, I know that.
They're little potent pills that like seeds that and I was wondering, what, when you write, are you, obviously you're writing, anyone who is awakening responds to it, but are you also writing for the beginner? Do you find that you hit those seekers that are just starting to like you would say blossom, or like the wounded bud?
Well, I hope so. I don't know. I don't like to make a distinction between the beginner and the advanced. In fact, I think there's a poem in this book. I can't remember if it's in this book, but I know I wrote one about how I'm not advanced anymore. I used to be advanced, but I'm not advanced. And there's one of the most, I don't think you can learn much spirituality from a book, but sometimes the words of a book can be imbued with such consciousness that it happens. And one of the most beautiful books, truly spiritual books I ever read was called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind.
That's one of my favorite books.
Shunryu Suzuki, who I met once.
You met him in San Francisco?
Yeah, years ago. I was at
California?
Yeah, I was in California. No, it actually was in Boulder, Colorado, and it was like a convocation of yogis, and all these yogis, including fallen yogis now, like Yogi Bhajan were there, and they were like, everybody was there. This was like 1970, I think. And we were all hippies, and we thought that drugs and spirituality were the same thing. And and it, sensuality, and it was a beautiful time, but he was like, whew, he was amazing, because when he got up there, he was just this very simple monk sitting on the stage, and everybody just kind of like became quiet. All the quietness that they had been trying to get,
Right.
just like it happened. And big discussion was about drugs. And I'll never forget the moment he said, I guess they're all right, but the thing is, just drinking a glass of water can be magic. And somebody just came up and handed him a glass of water out of nowhere, and he drank it. And we all went, oh. And from that moment on, there was no longer any conflict that I would need. I think many people felt this, that somehow all that we're seeking is right here. And we don't need to go out there and up there and beyond and get advanced and go to higher planes.
Right.
Oh, that can be such a trap, because meaning the universe, all comes bubbling out of astonishment.
Yes.
Just as you say, this is God. God is astonishment. And this idea that God sits there and knows stuff, and says, well, I think I'll teach a little of this, in this age, and a little more of this in that age. And I think I'll put them on different levels. These will be, the hierarchy of the saints. No, I think if there is such a thing as God, which I definitely believe there is, God is his or her its own state of astonishment every instant. And this entire universe is just coming out of that astonishment. As modern physics shows, particles are born out of the vacuum. They're just probability waves in a vacuum. And the vacuum begins to vibrate, and somehow these virtual electrons and virtual photons occasionally bubble out into what we call, they become more dense, and what we call matter. It all comes bubbling out of the void, if you want to call it that, kind of a negative term. Buddhists have always had to carry this. Westerners have always thought it was negative, because it was like nothing. But no thing is the source. Even Leonardo da Vinci, once, one of his greatest sayings in his notes, he said, the greatest thing that humans could possibly discover is the existence of nothing. That was Leonardo da Vinci. Because I think all great artists, philosophers, mystics, creative people have this insight at some point, this insight that they are nothing, and that everything that they are creating is just spilling out of nothing. And that's why I don't even feel like I'm writing poetry. If I'm writing and I'm working too hard, I know that my mind has gotten away and I've probably ruined it. That's, to me, the art is just to do a little work, but to honor that first discovery, that first spilling out of the void. Anyway, I'm just spilling now out of the void, so I'll shut up.
My stack, no, we should end the podcast right there. My stack art, I think I'm pronouncing it right, called that Belluccio or Belluccio was the Belluccio was the boiling up of that love and astonishment, and then the spilling like a pot of pasta over the top and boiling over was the Belluccio, and it just pouring forth, just like you just did.
Belluccio, so related to our word ebullience.
Yes.
I never heard that. That's beautiful. I never heard that term from him.
Yeah, I'm so in love with my stack art, and you, of course. I put you with first Rumi and Hafiz and you, not Kabir. You three.
Oh.
You, Hafiz, and Rumi, and then Kabir. And then
Well,
Shelley.
I think there's a lot of, I mean, I would never do that because what we see from Rumi and Hafiz really comes from Coleman Barks or this modern poet, Kandinsky.
Right.
I think that's his name.
Daniel, right?
Daniel, yeah. Yeah. And now Coleman Barks sits down with translations of Rumi, and he puts together the ideas from other people's translations. And so at least his versions, which are very beautiful, although they don't have anywhere near the form of the ancient Persian, they are related to Rumi's poems. But Daniel, who, if he didn't sign his poems Hafiz, would probably be one of my favorite poets. I love his work, but God, I don't know how his editors let him get away with it. You know, they're called poems of Rumi, poems of Hafiz, versions of Hafiz. And he really writes them not out of Hafiz at all, not out of the Persian. If you look at Hafiz, very long, graceful, classical, beautiful lines, which Persian scholars, beautiful to listen to. But the attempt to translate them into English has been kind of rough. It's like translating the Quran from Arabic. It just doesn't sound very good in English.
And I think even Coleman doesn't even know Arabic, right? He doesn't even know the language, I don't think.
Persian, yeah, neither does Daniel Kandinsky. They don't translate. Right.
He should just say they're poems inspired by or something.
Exactly.
And I think he does, like in one tiny line in the introduction, but it should be on the cover of the book.
Yeah. Anyway, I won't talk anymore about him, but thank you for your tribute. But I feel very, very, to be put on that level makes me uncomfortable.
Sorry, it's true. I think RJ had some questions.
Yeah, actually, one comment on the nothing that you were speaking of. It took me a while to realize nothing is actually everything, or the potential for everything. So it's not negative, but it was negative in the beginning of the waking up process. And the void was always such a strange mystery to me. What is the void? What is that ultimate emptiness? And then I finally started to see it as the one mind or universal consciousness is at rest, is the void. And that made a lot of sense to me. So I understand the negativity of the word nothing very, very well, and emptiness as well. I'm very, Suzuki is one of my favorites of all time. That's amazing you met that man. But the question I had was, your poems, like James was saying, like Rumi, they put me in a space when I read your poetry, divine space. So the question I had for you was, now that's before I practiced meditation and before I was waking up, I wouldn't read those poems of yours and Hafiz and Rumi. It would mean nothing to me, but they put me in the space now, and it does it to me every time. So my question to you, Fred, is, can poetry alone, without meditation, poetry alone transcend the individual? And an example I have is Ian McGilchrist. Are you familiar with him? He's a psychologist, very smart man. He said that he woke up, his awakening was through poetry. So my question to you, Fred, was, can poetry alone do it without meditation?
My new book, the introduction, really, this is what it's about. You're actually, and this is what I guess I am writing for. You were asking before, exploring the liminal space between poetry and meditation. That is the purpose of my poems. So your question is very apropos, because, you know, there are people who spend their whole lives amassing money and amassing power and amassing knowledge and amassing PhDs and degrees, but they never experience one moment of peace. They never experience one moment of stillness. And if all I want to do, and that's why what you guys have said to me is so nurturing today, because all I want to do, if I can leave behind a few poems that lead people to a moment, when they finish the poem, there's that moment of stillness, of inner peace. That moment is the seed of awakening. Once you've had that moment, meditation is just finding the practice, the practical way, and it's something I really believe that you should do every day. You know, I believe in that discipline. But what you're really doing is enabling that space, that little moment, that seed to grow and expand and become longer.
So your poetry does something to me internally, and maybe changes my perspective of the entire world for a moment. Now you're saying, now hone that feeling through meditation?
Yeah, now it's up to you. If you liked that moment, if something happened for just a moment, just a breath, and you became truly empty because you became truly present and truly astonished, now it's up to you to nurture that, find ways to nurture that moment of astonishment and inner silence. And that's where the practices of meditation, as long as they don't become, you know, so many people turn them into trinkets and talismans and, you know, magical formulas. Well, find a method that really works for you. Don't cling to it. Know that it leads to letting go. Meditation works when you let go of the method. You begin with the method, and then each time you meditate, if it's a really wonderful method, it will dissolve. It will leave you in that space, that quietness. You won't be sitting there the whole. I keep getting. Okay, it says recording stopped. So I think that moment of beginning is everything. So the advanced and the beginning are really the same moment. Just one lasts a little longer.
Right.
I like that. Yeah, our teacher, I was a magician for years, and I studied under, you might know, the amazing Randy, James Randi, the big skeptic.
Yeah, I remember.
So both RJ and I were big materialists, skeptic, atheists, and all about reason, and totally against any religion and spirituality. And one day, my other hero in magic said, Randy's wrong. Randy isn't skeptical enough. He isn't skeptical even about matter, the nature of matter. He thinks matter is solid, and he made a mistake. And that's why I like that you called it, you said virtual particles or virtual atoms, not atoms themselves, but virtual. And so his idea was magic, that moment of astonishment and magic where you just hold a rock up and you let it go and it floats in empty space. And it's a trick, but that moment could bring you to that clear space within you, just like your poems. It's a moment of astonishment. And he always wanted to put a crowbar into that and hold that, like you said, and keep it open. And that's what meditation does. And yeah, your poetry totally is the same pill, the same seed.
I agree.
Yeah, it was the great Rabbi Heschel, Abraham Heschel. Wonderful. I mean, you read his 2-volume work on the prophets, and you just read the Old Testament in a completely different way. You'll realize what a great poem it is. But he once said that true spirituality is amazement. True spirituality is amazement. Rabbi Heschel. So that Jewish tradition is so beautiful. They somehow I find that the Christian theologians are so rational, so dependent on the intellect, that they get stuck in doctrinal disputes. But the Jewish tradition, it's not I'm not Jewish, but but studying Hebrew in seminary, Hebrew, beautiful language, which the rationalists don't like, because things can mean other things.
You know that word, Fred? I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but once I read it, and it's a word, I think, in the Kabbalah, tizim. Am I saying it right?
I don't know.
Tzim, tzum. And it's the action that the infinite one mind, or the infinite light, as it contracts itself to make pretend to be finite and make the world. It's that whole
contract. Yeah. Heard that. Yeah.
Tizim.
Well, the other great, apropos to our discussion so far from the Jewish tradition and the Kabbalah, is the Ein Sof.
Yes, the light, right? The light.
Well, Ein is the first letter, and it can mean nothing. And Sof means point, can also mean a book. The Ein Sof Or, and Or means light. So it's the light emanating from the point of nothing. And the whole universe comes out of the Ein Sof Or the light. It comes out of the Ein Sof. And
Fred, you want to be astonished for 1 second?
Yeah.
I have your poem, The Shaking, here. The Shaking. Can you see that? And right at the bottom of it, at your last line, if you could see what I wrote right here, it says Ein Sof. Right there.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite poems, The Shaking.
Is that in Wounded Butt?
I don't know where it's from. I read it last week on our podcast. It was just RJ and I talking, and to let viewers know that you were coming, I read The Shaking, and
cool. Well, I'll look it up.
Sure.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah, look it up. It's pretty good.
So, Fred, would you you're not opposed to being classified as a non-dual poet, right?
Not at all.
Would you care to maybe just give a simple, brief explanation of what non-duality is?
Oh, I knew there was going to be a catch to that. Okay, Advaita, non-two, not two. Advaita, in my understanding, is the culmination of the 6 systems of Vedic philosophy, with yoga and Vaishtishta and all the different systems that cover like looking at a cube from 6 different sides of a cube. And the culmination of it all was the development of the vision of Advaita. It's like when I say the word home, what do you think of? It contains all the other images that you think of at home, all your memories, all the rooms, the colors, they're all implied in that word, home. So there is a wholeness, but it includes all its parts, all the parts. It is not a negation of any of the experiences. You don't have to say, oh, I'm finished with that. You know, I'm finished with going to the bathroom. I'm finished with going to the bedroom. I'm finished with the kitchen. Now I'm going to get to the home. But the home is the whole. So Advaita is the vision of the whole. Non-duality was never meant to be an alternative to duality. It includes duality.
Yeah.
It includes bhakti, devotion. I've studied with a couple, I've had the great good fortune of studying with 2 teachers from India who I consider to be gurus or masters or teachers of non-duality, but they were also devotees of God. If you look at the source of non-duality, Adi Shankara, the great Shankara, the source of the Shankaracharya tradition, who basically defined Advaita, he also wrote, look at the hymns of Shankara, this most famous of all Advaitins. He wrote hymns, his hymn to the goddess, his hymn to the guru, his hymn to Shiva. They're the most sensuously beautiful, mystical hymns of devotion. And so there's obviously something going on here, you know, when you have this Advaitist, and then within the Advaita is the experience of devotion and the play of the soul and God and the enjoyment of all the diversity of things. I'm afraid that in the West, we have created, like we have with yoga, it's become a conceptual handle. It's become a meme. Oh, Advaita. And okay, I'm going to defend Advaita. And it's become something against other things. Advaita, if it's real, is the blossom. It's the blossoming of consciousness.
Mm.
That's all it is. It's the blossoming of consciousness. A consciousness that says yes to everything. It's a consciousness that no longer is concerned with all the dividing and the conceptual divisions. Yeah, you use the intellect to solve practical problems, but you don't use the intellect to talk about, you know, God is here and the soul is here and there's 7 different planes and, you know, all this. That's okay. You wanted to do that for a while. Let go of that. Now enjoy the wholeness, the blossom. You know, when you smell a flower and you enjoy that fragrance, you don't pick all the petals apart, you know, looking for the fragrance, you know. Which one of these contains the fragrance? No, it's the wholeness.
Mm.
So I don't do a lot of, I don't participate in groups that talk a lot about Advaita and non-duality because I find it all pretty much the politics of it.
Yeah, a lot of fighting in those groups.
Yeah, yeah, and some coldness too, because they're always trying to get beyond.
Yeah.
Oh, this experience of my heart, well, that's too much, like that might bind me to duality, or I might get some kind of God concept, so I got to get beyond it. And yeah, all this attempt to get beyond puts us back in the realm of being advanced, right?
Right.
It takes us away from that beginning place. Yeah.
And you write a lot about the body, and certain Advaita people would say, you are not, like the Maharaj would say, you are not the body, you are not the body. But you see the body more of like a temple, right?
Exactly. Yeah, there's a poem in the book, which I don't want to read now. I just want to read some more short meditative ones when we get there. But there's a poem that really, really deals with that specifically. They say you are not this body, but I say you are. I think that's the name of the poem. I say you are.
That'll be good.
You are this body. And then what does this body turn out to be? That's the thing.
Right.
There was a great teacher named Swami Muktananda who's passed on, the Siddha Yoga, and there was controversies and things, but he was a ripe soul. And I remember the first thing I read by him, and he was one of those few who actually, not just in person, but he actually wrote things, the books based on his talks. Really, really energizing. And I remember him saying that the body contains, now I don't know if he was talking about the chakras and things, but he said, your body contains all possible worlds, all worlds. It's like your body is the matrix. It's the axis for many other worlds besides just the body. And that image, I don't know whether I got it from him or just my own meditation, but the poems in this book just keep coming back to that. Maybe too much, I don't know, but it just keeps coming back to that image of your spine, your body from crown to toe as the axis of everything.
Can I call that body the body mind?
I would. Yeah. Because, yeah, I would call it the body mind.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say that the mind is the energy field that's given off by that body. It's the flame on the wick, and the body's the wick, but they work together. And it's, your body doesn't stop at your outline. Your body goes on and on and on.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So another theme that keeps cropping up in these poems that I just can't stop sharing is that every particle, probably on the level, not the atom, but the neutron within the atom, every particle, subtle, when you get down to the neutron and the quarks, string theory, all this string. I see every atom in your body as threaded, strung to a star. So that you are this radiance. Your body is this radiance that is connecting you to stars and galaxies. Now, you don't see that with your physical eye, although I'm sure there are some state of evolved nervous system and evolved consciousness, which probably does see that. Can you imagine you're walking down the street and just looking at another human being, just being this radiance that connects with the whole universe? I mean, that's what a human being is. Wow. And we are just, I think we as a human race, if we don't destroy ourselves first through the mind, we are just on the verge of discovering who we really are and what we really are. Yeah.
That's
I think
exactly.
it's starting, even at the university level and the academics, it's starting to change. There is a change happening. There are quantum physicists, like you were mentioning quantum before, that are coming towards the idealist view of the world, because materialism is completely untenable, and there's something more going on. It's not the sensation within our skin is a mental event. It's like you're saying, I had some transcendent experiences, and my identity had expanded beyond the borders of sensation.
Mm.
So it's definitely, yeah, I am 100% with that.
It's like a universal body.
Yeah, and we used to speak when we were waking up in the process. I used to say all the time, pure conscious, I'm here, and pure consciousness is over there, and I'm going to become that. Until I realized the body is universal consciousness in a form of which way it looks through to other human beings, but we're all consciousness. But I kept in my mind for years, I kept saying I have to get to consciousness. Meanwhile, I am consciousness. That was a fun one for a couple of years, you know?
Yeah. It all comes back to that, almost like, almost has the structure of a joke.
Yes.
Where, it's punchline. And I call it the jolt of being here in the body.
Like
The jolt of coming home or coming home to your body. It's like, it's the punchline of a joke. You know, you were, and you were like, all the seeking and complicated stories that you were following, and then wham, and that jolt. And you know, that jolt, on that subject, I'm so glad that I studied the Western scriptures, because even though I studied with yogis, and the Vedanta tradition is, really my tradition, the Vedic tradition of India, but I have no prejudice against the Bible, as so many do, because when you read it deeply, the stuff is there. And it's really powerful. I mean, the universal body of Christ, the word becomes flesh. So that relationship between the subtle and the gross is like the whole point is to become incarnate. And there's this one beautiful line in, I think, the first letter to the Corinthians. It says, therefore, glorify God in your body. It's right from the New Testament.
Wow.
Glorify God in your body. And Jesus said, my favorite teaching of Jesus said, the eye is the light of the body. I was talking about the eye of consciousness. The inner eye, consciousness is the light of the body. If your eye be single, be one. If your eye is single, then your whole body will be filled with light.
Perfect.
Wow. Wow.
That's the Bible? Yeah, that's right there. But, people go by it, and theologians have obscured it, given it all kinds of other meanings. But there it is, very pure teaching.
And he said, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. It's not far. It's not. I used to think it's way out there, but it's at hand.
Yeah.
You didn't really mention that part.
Sunday. And also, I think Jesus said, I am the light of the world, but then he also said, you are the light of the world. And they leave that part out. You are the light.
When I first went to seminary, I wrote 3 things that I wanted to see if Christianity would, as it's taught in the church, would deal with. And I won't go into the others, but the main one was, is it going to give me the experience of God in the present moment? Is it going to address the present moment? Or is it only going to be about the past and future?
Right.
And I found over and over again that Jesus's teachings constantly, even on the grammatical level, he keeps taking you out of the past tense and the future and saying, I am. He even says, before Abraham was, I am. That's a quote. Nowhere did I find anything of that in the teaching, the professors, the courses. It was all about the past, and it was all about the future.
Right.
Totally. Never once in seminary did I hear a single professor or even meet another student who was lit up about the presence of God. it was all these teachings about, okay, this happened in history and we have to prove this and this is going to happen in the future. Oh,
And when did you find Meister Eckhart?
Oh, I can't remember at what point, but when I was in seminary, I did become a Quaker as my practice, which of course is sitting in silence and then sharing words out of the silence. But I discovered these writings by Rufus Jones, this beautiful, beautiful Quaker professor from Haverford of philosophy, Rufus Jones. And he had two books, which are now, I think, back in print. In fact, I just got one of them on Kindle. And it was called, and I found it in the library at my seminary, Princeton. And it's Spiritual Reformers of the 17th Century. Well, that sounds dull enough, right? Oh my God. If the church had listened to these guys, instead of listening to Martin Luther and John Calvin, we would live in a different society. These were the spiritual reformers of the radical Reformation. The Reformation of, Calvinism and Lutheranism and all, that we study in our books, that was just going a little way. There were these other teachers and groups who took the ideas of the Reformation to its extreme, eradicating hierarchy, discovering the present moment. Everyone in this moment is a priest. All the Bible refers to things that are happening now. We have very few groups that come out of that radical Reformation. One is the Quakers, but these teachers, and many of them were, they were in prisons, they were repressed, but we still have their writings. And this book, Spiritual Reformers of the 17th Century, contains a lot of these writings, and it just completely blew me away. I said, here it is. We have this in our tradition. We have these amazing mystics and groups that were practicing, Advaita and what we've been talking about here, but it was all repressed by the hierarchy.
Right.
Yeah, because they wanted the power.
Yeah.
They did not want you to awaken.
Right.
They wanted to hold the keys to the kingdom. And they did not want you to know that the key is right here, baby. Just
Is that why there's only 4 gospels instead of like 82? Or is there a different reason to that?
I really can't answer that. Because many of the Gnostic Gospels are very beautiful, Gnostic Gospel of Thomas, but and the Gnostics, I fell in love with many of the Gnostics, but when you look deeply into it, Gnosticism was a very troubled rejection of matter. Most of the Gnostic groups rejected the material world very, very much. And the incarnation, Christ was just the spiritual Christ, and you had to get away from the earth and be liberated somewhere else. So there's some good reason why we have the 4 gospels that we have. They seem to be grounded. The teachings are there, but they're grounded in community and practice.
Okay, so it's not really Constantine and power and church authority and rule. It's more with what you're saying.
I think that that certainly Constantine had a lot to do with that, and the Nicene, the Council of Nicaea.
Yeah.
Actually, reincarnation was taught in the church way up beyond that into the Council of Chalcedon in the 6th century. So there's been that repression has gone on for a long time, but I think in the great sifting of things that the 4 gospels contain, very beautiful treasures. And I don't think you have to just read the Gnostic Gospels in order to find the true Christ, so to speak. However, there's one, the Gospel of Philip, refers to something that is a mystery. But again, it occurs a lot in my poems. They believe, this one Gnostic group anyway, that the supreme sacrament, beyond the other sacraments of the church, was the sacrament of the bridal chamber. And no one knows what it was. I believe it was the chamber Jesus spoke of in the Gospels as your inner chamber, your heart. And in the sacrament of the bridal chamber, this has so much to do with yoga. You know, the Inga and the Pingala, the feminine lunar nerve and the masculine solar nerve, they become the caduceus of Hermes around the spine, our symbol of Western medicine, also of yoga,
right?
Shakti, and they are joined, the sun and the moon, the male and the female energies in the body. Jesus taught exactly the same thing in these Gnostic Gospels, and in the Gospel of Philip, he refers to the sacrament of the bridal chamber, where the beloved, the lover and beloved, for me it's Christ and Magdalene. In the East, it's Krishna and Radha, Shiva and Shakti. They are united. It is your feminine and masculine united in your heart, becoming one. And that was a sacrament in the early church. Very profound practice of yoga.
Didn't you have a poem? Was it called Open? No, one of them. I remember reading a poem of yours about that, about the bridegroom and the divine union or the divine marriage with.
Yeah, I have a lot of poems about that, but I do have one here, which is a wedding poem.
Oh, great!
That I'll share. Is that okay?
Yeah, that would be great.
I would love it.
Yeah. So I'm sure I got it right here, but if I don't, I'll just have to read another one.
By the way, Fred, whenever I hear the word Quakers,
yeah,
the first word that pops into my mind is discipline. I don't know why. It seems like, in a good way, I mean, like a good discipline. They have I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about that.
They've gone through so many transformations. It's funny now when I think of Quakers, I think of political. They're just caught up in, I think, too much in politics. But in the original Quaker way, the discipline was being silent together in a group, communal silence. And then out of that silence, when you wanted to speak, but you had to be compelled to it from the heart. It wasn't just you speaking, it was you were at that moment the minister of the meeting. There was no minister, there's no priest.
I like it.
These are the ideas that grew right out of the Radical Reformation. You'd sit in this circle, there's no priest, and you were all in the silence. And then as a person is moved, they speak.
Wow.
And then silence, and then someone else may speak. And somehow by the end of the meeting, these messages that all seem to come from the heart and from the spirit are very threaded together. And that's the worship. So it's a very direct expression of the idea of silence and word. You know, the creation through the word and the word coming out of silence. That's the mechanics of a Quaker meeting.
Beautiful.
So anyway, here is a wedding poem. I thought maybe someone might read this. You know, when you go to a wedding, people ask maybe their friend to read a poem or something. So it's been used in a couple of weddings. And not too many old women and grandmothers got mad. In fact, I think they liked it. There's a feast between your nipples. I think it's a wedding. Powerful vows are spoken here, where the sun gives the moon away. Anyone who says, I do, gets crushed, danced on like a grape, and changed into what they were thirsting for. It doesn't matter if you lost your invitation, just show up. The doorkeeper will let you in. Tell him, I'm homeless and parched. I only came for the free food, the last best jug of wine. Now the doorkeeper is God, who is very, very lazy. All he does all day is let people in like a mirror. Just give him a steady gaze until you see the ancient smile of your own heart, playful as the turquoise curve of eternity. In your next inhalation, feel the rose gold garment of his grace upon you. He'll speak your name so softly, the way Jesus said Mary in the garden. Then you'll remember, sure enough, it's your wedding.
Wow.
Oh, that's the greatest.
That is amazing.
Wow. Wait, Fred, can you just tell us a little bit? You use this word a lot, and Rumi does too. And I love it. The beloved. What is the beloved? You have 1 minute. 1 minute.
So you're the lover. C.S. Lewis, great Christian writer, said that in relation to God, we're all female. This is striking, but all the great saints who wrote about the mystical life usually referred to the soul as the bride of Christ. That's the way the yogi identifies with the Shakti, Kundalini Shakti, seeking union with Lord Shiva. The Shekinah in Hebrew tradition, the Shekinah seeking union with the Lord, Hashem. So there, in all these traditions, the feminine spirit has gone out into creation to create the world and to become souls, all for the purpose of coming back, coming home to the Creator. And the Creator would be nothing without her. She is his delight. In fact, there's a passage in the Jewish book of Proverbs in the Bible where wisdom, Chokhmah, is speaking as a woman. And she says, I was with him when the stars were created. I was his delight. It's extraordinary. In the Bible, it's the feminine aspect of God, the Chokhmah or wisdom, Sophia in the Greek, is saying, I was there. I was with the Creator in the beginning when he was creating the universe, and I was his delight. And she even uses the word play. So we are God in the form of the lover, and God is the beloved. And this duality exists for the sake of dissolving into unity. And the unity then just dances in the duality, and it's all play. It's all lila.
The duality is only from our perspective, right? There really is no duality. But there's duality from the human point of view.
Yeah, you can say that, except that God loves duality because God loves to play.
I heard, I might be getting it wrong. I'm going to paraphrase, maybe Hafiz or Rumi, I'm not sure which one, but it was something to the effect of God is the dancer and like we are the dance.
Yeah.
Like, so there's no two, there's just God dancing, but the dance that God's dancing is the universe. Can we?
Yeah. And we become identified with this individuality, but there's a reason for that, so that this individuality can be amazed. To go back to your astonishment, we exist as an individual so that we can be astonished by divine love. And in that moment of astonishment, if you go back to it and froze it, there would only be one. This is why the mystic poets, the East and West, talked about the kiss. The Song of Solomon in the Bible says, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. And that is the beloved talking to the lover. And Rumi says, there is some kiss that we all want, the kiss of the soul and the spirit. There it is. So the kiss, what happens when you kiss? What happens when lovers really kiss? In that moment, just if you could freeze that moment of time, well, they close their eyes, then there's a kiss, and in that instant, there's no longer two.
There's one, yeah.
There's one.
Yeah.
There's this, that's the no thing. There's the return to the no. So the very kiss of duality is the moment of no thingness. And this is why creation exists, so that we can keep coming back to that kiss.
That I was going to ask, why is there a universe? But I think you just answered it.
And I'm, this is the most ancient answer, because in the yoga tradition, in the Vedic tradition of India, the ultimate explanation for why there's a universe is Leela, Leela Shakti. And Leela means play, the power of play. It's the play power of God. And that's why things exist, because God, okay, here I am, I'm one, everything is peaceful and beautiful, and there's only one, but hey, I'm going to churn myself up into worlds and galaxies and lovers, and it's all this play. So it's sometimes very hard for us to see the world as play, because it's so much pain in it. But
would you say that God is pre-planning that to happen, or is God not aware and it's more intuitive the way that happens?
Well, I would never say God is not aware, but I think see, we're approaching a mystery here where our language doesn't work very well. But I think I really like your distinction between pre-planning and intuition. Because pre-planning, pre-conceptualizing, no, I don't think God has a plan. It's all inherent in his moment of intuition, which is eternity. Right. And this is the eternal moment of God intuiting the playful nature of his, herness, and her, hisness, and their own self, kissing, eternally. So we keep coming back. The ocean keeps rising up into waves, and the waves are nothing but the ocean. Every wave at its base is the whole ocean.
Right. That's a great answer. Great answer.
And
you were just answering another question I had. I think you just mentioned it. Why suffering exists to the degree that it does. I think you basically are answering that already.
Well, I hope so, because I wouldn't want to try to answer it now.
The darkness and the light, you need both, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I like to say, and one of the lines in this poetry book does say this, that darkness is not the absence of light. Darkness is the womb of light.
Whoa.
Wow.
And that's physics.
Wow.
The vacuum light comes out of darkness. There's no doubt about it. It's the nothing, the no thing, that begins to vibrate and creates these particles sparkling. It's the sparkling of the void. It's amazing.
That's very similar to what I said before about nothing is really the potential for everything. It's not a negative nothing. It's actually a very positive.
Yeah.
It's similar to that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so I no longer think of the void as nothing. I think of the void as a ripe pomegranate. I think of the void as sparkling. I think of the void as this just cornucopia of bubbling up.
Yeah.
But when you try to put your finger on it, or look at anything, it dissolves. This is a real teaching of Buddhism. It's not a negative teaching.
Right.
When the Buddhist says that everything is transient, everything is impermanent, the key teaching, it's all like impermanent. That is the dissolving that causes astonishment and wonder.
It's the dissolving of the ego, right?
The dissolving of everything, because when we cling to things and try to make them concrete and hold on to them, that causes suffering.
Mm.
When we enjoy, as William Blake said, he who kisses the joy as it flies lives in eternity's sunrise.
Beautiful.
And he who clings to himself the joy doth the winged life destroy.
Wow.
So Blake knew it. Blake had it. When it's the clinging,
yeah,
and trying to make things permanent that causes suffering.
And our mind naturally wants to cling and think everything. It views the world as permanent.
Exactly.
But it's not. So there it is, right there, right?
Yeah. And that's where we're being helped so much by the vision of modern science, which is showing us how the uncertainty principle underlies the very creation of matter,
I would have to agree with that. And I would like to also add to that a lot of people, when they speak about quantum physics, they don't mention the last 40 years, not 100 years ago, but the last 40 years, there have been incredible retesting of the experiments of Heisenberg and Schrodinger and everyone. There is no doubt. There is not even a sliver of doubt left. There is no object without the subject. There's not even a debate about it any longer. There's just materialists are hanging by a thread, hoping that there's some other answer besides the world is really consciousness, and the physicality is the way consciousness looks to our perspective. It's getting there, though. I love that you're on top of the quantum physics, Fred. That's wonderful.
Well, again, it's like saying that you're writing Hafiz when you're really not. I mean, I'm not a quantum physicist, but I keep up as much as I can with the implications and the knowledge of quantum physics without trying to over metaphor it, because some people do. Some people, they take something from quantum physics and turn it into something it's really not. But there's enough in the real stuff of quantum physics that is just mind-blowing and beautiful and affirming. So yeah.
Schrodinger and Planck, they were like mystics.
Oh yeah,
Schrodinger, Oppenheimer.
Oh,
they read the Upanishads.
Right.
Yeah, Oppenheimer, the Upanishads, and Schrodinger was very interested in the Vedas and Vedanta. He was a Vedantist. And he said, I can't remember the exact words, but Schrodinger said there is only one mind.
Right, yeah.
We live in this illusion that we have different minds, but the ultimate truth is there is only one of us. It's all consciousness. And he did feel that his physics was moving in the direction of showing that. But, that there are some physicists you can sit down with today and they will that will make them angry. They will say, oh, that's crazy. But
can you talk a little bit about another simple question about what samadhi is?
Sama, it's a root of our word same, the one, the even. Not that we're all the same, but it's that level of unity. And dhyan means meditation. Dhyana is meditation. Samadhi is that meditation which settles into the one. Now, there was a phrase that you used way back in the beginning of our conversation, where you said rest, awareness at rest.
Oh, I said,
the
point is the one mind at rest.
That's samadhi. That's samadhi.
Right.
When all the thoughts dissolve into awareness itself at rest, that is the 0 point of all energy in the universe.
Yeah.
And that's why I love 0 much more than I love 1.
Yes.
0, everything. 0 is fat with that stillness of samadhi, and yet it's potential. Everything comes out of that seed. Whereas 1, there's a certain kind of dominating, hierarchical, what's the word?
Boss.
Yeah, bossiness about 1. It's like the way we use our finger. No, everything is 1. Got to be 1. Got to get back to the 1. But to me, there's something much more liberating about 0. So that 0 point is really samadhi. But when you experience it in meditation, I think so many people think that it's a thought. And there's nothing more dulling than sitting there and trying to think nothing. Okay, I'm thinking nothing and I'm being nothing and nothing. That's just the mind thinking itself into a state of kind of like oblivion. Samadhi is a real energy. It's that mind, that thinking mind no longer has to think 1, 1, 1, I'm meditating. No, that dissolves into this abundant energy, and that abundant energy is samadhi. So it's the dissolution of the thinking mind into this energy field where everything is silent and yet abundant at the same time. Everything comes from that source. Yeah. And the grace, I have to say, any experience that I've ever had of that came by grace, not by any effort. And so this is where I become quite conservative in my respect for the true teachers, the true gurus, the true traditions that pass on ways to do this. It's just that we tend to, what do? We worship the finger pointing at the moon instead of going to the moon. I have been in traditions, I've been in groups, I honor the teacher and I practice the teaching, but I don't keep going back and, bowing down and worshiping this guy in a white robe and a beard, and sandals. It's such a mistake. Like if you're a bee, you don't worship the flower, you take the pollen back to the hive. And you say, thank you. But you take that pollen and you make honey, and you make honey in your own heart. You don't keep going back to the flower and worshiping the flower.
Right.
You make the honey in your heart. And the guru, the two that I have had, one was the other's disciple. So there's a connection there. But I can feel them. Whenever I meditate, I can feel them. And I can feel them like they're so happy. They're so happy that I have this in my heart. And they're so happy that I've realized that that's where it is. So not in the ashram, not bowing down and touching some guy's feet with your forehead. No, it's just not it.
Those two gurus that you mentioned, so is that mind-to-mind transmission, or are you feeling something from, off of your guru? Are you receiving something?
No, I not at this time when I meditate. I'm sure when I was with them I did, but they gave me the practices, the meditation practices, to make me independent of their presence.
I got you. Yeah.
And so I feel them because when I go to that state of samadhi, or that energy field, that's where they are.
Uh-huh.
And so it's like one of them once said, you know, when you go to God, don't go to God as a beggar, go to God as a friend. You know, it's not like you hold out your empty hand, but you hold out your hand in friendship. So yeah, the guru is your friend. And that's a beautiful word for Christ that the mystics, the Christian mystics, as well as Rumi, called God, not just beloved, but the friend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, would you be where you are right now as far as how self-realized you are if you had no gurus? If those two were never...
I don't think so. I don't think so.
They were essential.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Swami Vivekananda and a lot of the tradition, the Indian Hindu tradition, they really say a guru is the utmost importance.
I know they do, and I'm not going to tell another person that you know you have to have a guru, but for me, it was. I mean, I can only think of myself as a wandering, needy soul who was looking and looking and looking, and I needed the grace of a teacher to guide me, and I don't always trust this do-it-yourself American spirituality. You know, that's no, we don't need any. And then very often the very people, I hate to say this, and I know quite a few of them, and I love them, but very often the very people who say, oh, no teachers, no gurus, the next thing you know, they're giving seminars and they're inviting you to their workshops, and you know, they're playing that role. So yeah, I never think of myself as a spiritual teacher, because I have met spiritual teachers and I owe everything to their grace.
But you know, many people do view you that way, as a spiritual teacher.
Really? I
see you that way. I don't know. Should I stop seeing you that way?
No, you can see me any way you want, but I would never say, hey, I'm a spiritual teacher. I never bill myself as a spiritual teacher.
Yeah.
How about a poetic medicine man giving astonishment, walking everybody home?
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed in America, obviously, if you had a transcendent experience and the next day you had no guru, you might go off onto some wrong paths. You might choose a wrong path if you have no guidance, trying to figure out what experience you just had, awakening experience you had.
Yeah. And you might spend an awful lot of time trying to get back there through trying, you know, all kinds of things that were not necessary.
Right.
Or attributing to yourself, you know, I caused this because of what I ate, or because I visualized a rose, you know, or something. I think a lot of religious people, much as I love religious traditions deeply, but I think a lot of religious people in their practices, whether it's a rosary or going to church or something or whatever, you know, they have an experience and then they assume it was caused by that.
Right.
And I think that's been a big problem in the history of religions, where people took the effect as the cause.
And like Suzuki would say, Shunryu Suzuki, you trying to recapture that feeling, that trying will prevent it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's fascinating to me. It's just amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah. To me, the sign of meditation is effortlessness. And so if I advise people on a practice, one thing to start with is listening. And ironically enough, that mind that's bothering you, especially if you're bothered by too many thoughts. Oh my God, people say this all the time. I was awake in the middle of the night and my mind was churning and going and I couldn't stop thinking. I just can't stop thinking. That's the opportunity right there. I say, okay, just turn to your mind that's bothering you and listen to it and say, here I am, mind. What is it you're saying? I'm listening. I'm listening. Something extraordinary happens. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. It's silence.
In Raja Yoga, Swami Vivekananda says the same exact thing. He says, don't sit down and try to stop your thoughts. Watch, observe, look at the mind, watch it go on. Learn what's happening, first.
And I used to think that witnessing was separating.
Right.
But in that act of welcoming your mind, loving, hugging your mind, because you are not your mind. You are something much vaster than your mind. Just turn to the one that's bothering you, the mind, and hug it and say, okay, I'm listening. Address it in a friendly way. And that mind dissolves into the listener. It's so amazing. And at that point, you can start listening to the universe being created all around you. Every atom, every electron, the stars, the seeds in the earth, it's all like bubbling up out of that silence of listening. So to me, the closest thing to meditation is just listening.
I like that because a lot of people do fight their thoughts and they continue to do that. In your way, embracing seems much better.
Yeah.
Fred, do you have the poem Shaped Like a Grail around? Is that nearby? That just reminded me of that poem.
Oh.
I don't know if that's nearby or not.
Yeah, but I wasn't going to read that because that's that's the only poem in the book that you actually have to see on the page.
Oh, okay. You could save it. That'll be a cliffhanger.
There's a picture of it on my Facebook page. I decided to share it by photographing it on the page because it says a poem in the shape of a grail.
Yeah.
And the poem is actually shaped like a grail on the page. So yeah.
It will save
I will read another one here.
Sure.
If you want me to.
And by the way, just so everyone can see.
Oh, there it is.
What it looks like.
There it is. Yep. Yeah. Okay. So, and this is kind of apropos about what you were saying in the beginning about astonishment. So
great.
Maybe I don't know how much time we want to spend. I don't know if you want to end with this one or what.
Sure.
I'll just read it.
Well, can I issue one or two more questions and then we'll end with that poem?
Oh, sure.
Okay. One question would be just interested in your writing process. Do you abide in the self and the poetry comes to you without effort, or do you have to get the intellect involved a little bit and make the poem?
That's a beautiful question. Some people say, oh, I go and I discipline myself and I sit down whether I have something to write or not, and I just write, at 9 a.m. I don't do that. To me, it happens. Have you ever heard of Turiya, the fourth state of consciousness between, it's like, it's not waking, it's not dreaming, it's not sleep. It's just awareness. But it happens between dreaming and waking, or it happens in deep meditation. And so sometimes as I'm waking in the morning, before what I call yesterday's mind crashes in with all its, like a bag full of rocks, just you've woken up, but you haven't started thinking yet. In that, there's a breath of someone. For me, it's the goddess. Or it can happen in the middle of the night. And it almost always happens at the end of a meditation. I meditate every morning, just half an hour, and every evening, half an hour. And toward the end of meditation, it happens. And it's either a stir that I feel right here or actually in the heart. And it's like someone's breath. And it begins just as a breath, just as an energy, no words, that pre-verbal state. But it's the movement of Shakti. And it becomes a word, and I listen to it, and it becomes a phrase.
Wow.
And that usually, that's the seed of the poem. And sometimes I just have to get up and go write it down. And it's out of that seed, which is usually the first line. Sometimes it ends up being not the first line, but in the beginning, it's just the first line. And then the poem flows out of that, just like growing out of a seed. Now then comes the big question. How much are you going to go back and work on it?
Right.
How much? I can't tell you how many times I've ruined poems by my mind going back and, I have to turn this and, right. So, but I do have to go back and work a little bit. So it's just like doing enough work with the mind, the intellect, but not too much. And the best poems have a quality of innocence and roughness that I don't want to lose. When they become too careful or too much explanation, then I've ruined it.
Right.
So, and people remind, like you did, James, you reminded me twice today of poems that I couldn't even remember.
I wrote you once, a while back, we were talking, and I said, Fred, that poem with the moth, remember the moth? And you are the flame, but God is the moth. And that just spun me around years ago, because I always thought of it as God would be the flame and we are the moth, but you switched it. And that was so potent for me. It hit me, knocked me right across the room. And I reminded you, and you had forgotten about it.
Well, thank you, because guess what? That's the first poem in the book.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
And I meant that irony, because we always think of, God as the flame and we're the moth. And there's that busy mind again, and you think you're the mind, but no. Yeah, and you had another question?
One more question.
I was wondering, I'm not sure of your age. You look very healthy. Do you have a certain diet and exercise?
I eat what I like. I don't have any dietary rules. I eat mostly just lots of vegetables, and but and I love seafood, vegetables and seafood and stuff. But I don't, like if I go to someone's house for dinner, I eat what they serve me. I eat from the hand of love. I think when you're really in touch with your body, the way we've talked about here, your body will tell you what to eat.
Yes.
Your body will tell you what to eat. And I hate people telling me what to eat. Oh, you can't eat that because it has gluten in it, or it's got this, or it's got that. No, it's kind of become like fundamentalism, it's a form of fundamentalism. You got to eat this or you're not going to make it. And I do exercise as much as I can. I used to go to the gym a lot, but then because of COVID, the gym's kind of closed. I do a lot of hiking, and I do a lot of
or what was at the gym? Weightlifting or bicycle or?
I would do weightlifting, and I would do exercise machines and all, which really kind of started messing up my back because they're not ergonomically, like real motion. So I live in this town on Puget Sound with this really steep hill. It goes right up from the water, like about 6 blocks. So what I've been doing for the last 2 years, because I love to hike, I love the mountains, I go out there and I go up and down and up and down, and I'm listening to great novels in my ear pods, and I'll do like 5 or 6 hill climbs, and it's really great. But I love to be active. Yeah, I like to get exercise. But I think that the breathing that I do and the meditation that I do really plugs me into a source of energy that I have to attribute health to. So.
And that's excellent. And the final question actually would relate to what you just ended on. Do you practice, do you endorse meditation techniques? Would it be breathing, transcendental meditation? Is there neti neti technique from the Hindu, from the Advaita tradition? Is there one in specific, or is it anything that gets you to the silence? Whatever gets you to the silence.
Yeah, both. I have been practicing a technique for 52 years, every morning and evening. And I've supplemented that for the last 26 or 7 years with a breath practice. And just stick with it. But I do not by any means tell people that, this is the best one or that's the best one. But don't dig a hole that's 3 feet deep and then go off and dig another one and then dig another one and then dig another one, or you ruin your yard. Stick to your practice. Stick to your practice. There was times that I thought, oh, this isn't doing any good for me. This isn't doing any good. But you just keep going and keep going through the practice, daily practice, and don't make a cult out of it. Just meditate and then forget about meditation during the day and do what's creative for you. Because you won't grow just by meditating. You grow by doing the meditation and then getting into activity and doing what you love to do. That's what infuses samadhi or consciousness into your nervous system.
Wow.
People make this terrible mistake where they try to stay in a meditative state all day while they're in activity. I'm going to keep my mind quiet, even when I'm, playing tennis or at the office. No, it just doesn't work. Do the meditation and plunge into that silence, into that vast zero, that nothing, and then come out and be 100% in activity. That's what I learned from my teacher, Maharishi, and I don't care what anybody else says about him. It was the greatest wisdom I ever learned. So I do the meditation, 25 minutes, a half an hour, and then I go out and I forget about meditating. I just do my activity. And gradually the nervous system gets cultured, so that the two start to interpenetrate.
Right.
Yeah. But don't divide your mind. Don't try to be active in the marketplace or in the workplace and hold on to some inner silence, because it's gonna give you headaches or else make you weak in your activity. Experience the silence and then go out and be active. It's like everything in the universe is a wave of activity and rest. Physics will tell you this. It's waves. So the activity and the rest. And the deeper the rest, the higher the wave. So the deep plunge into samadhi and then 100% activity. Yeah.
And don't think about your meditation when you're active in the world.
Right. Don't try to be in meditation and activity at the same time.
So, but if let's say you meditate and then you go out and then you witness something startling or unnerving, should you try to remember something or
that's a gift. That's when that's when the unity happens.
Wow.
That astonishment. That's a gift. Yeah. But then don't hold on to it. I mean, you can go write a poem about it or something, or you can share it in your enthusiasm, but in your mind, don't try to like fabricate, this state. See, people are really into states.
Well,
oh, I was in a state of astonishment. So now I'm going to kind of fabricate that state. It just doesn't work like that.
Well, let me give you an example. Let's say I'm meditating every morning. Things are happening. I'm awakening.
Yeah.
And I'm part of, let's say I'm part of a bowling team. I'm in a league. And I go to this bowling night every Thursday. I don't really bowl. It's just a.
I was hoping you did, because that's.
No, I don't. But I'm not opposed to bowling. Not opposed to it. But I go to this bowling thing every Thursday, and after a while, I say, "Nah, this bowling. It's okay. It's fun, but I'm around these people, and they're not like me. That no one's a meditator. No one's really thinking. They're just. I should stop doing that. Like, does that happen?
Yeah, definitely. And that's where you want to be natural and intuitive. As you grow, your tastes will change, the food you eat will change, but you don't have to adopt an unnatural philosophy about it. If you love bowling, I mean, there are things that I love that, this integration that I was talking about is the integration of the gross and the subtle. So yeah, the growth, I mean, how far are you going to take it? Are you going to say the whole idea of being in a body is gross? I have to get rid of that? No. So honor the things that you enjoy, but pay attention to how life wants you to change. If you've been hanging out with people who are doing stuff that, is not good for you, whether it's drinking too much or the drug thing, or whether it's just that they're into something maybe just very crude that you no longer feel right doing, just cultivate new relationships, and that's going to be a natural growth. But it doesn't mean that you have to set up a rule about what you reject, because what somebody else rejects, you might really enjoy. Like, I love the Seattle Seahawks. My daughter and I go to Seahawks games.
Oh, yeah?
And that only started a few years ago. I used to play football back in the day, but I never thought, after all these years of meditation, and stuff, that I would get into that first game when I came up into the stadium and the people it was like chanting Om. It was shamanic. And these people were dressed in shamanic clothes that looked like Seahawks, the team came. Oh, it was fantastic. And the chant, it's just like chanting Om. And on a gross level, it was like this communal shamanic celebration.
Wow.
And it was beautiful. And so, yeah, I go to a couple of games, or at least one game a year with her. And I never thought I would be doing that, but it's great. It's kind of like in the great cartoon of the universe, it's like play. It's like part of the play. I love jazz. I get very bored. I get very bored just listening to people chanting bhajans all the time, or new age spiritual music. I mean, I like that in its place, but I love jazz. I play tenor sax, and I love Sonny Rollins, and I love John Coltrane, and I love the great jazz musicians and Miles Davis. Oh yeah. He's amazing.
Yeah.
His compositions more than his playing.
James knows who he is.
His chords are amazing. So each person has their own delight, and just go with what delights you, because that's where the energy is. Yeah, and that's never going to mislead you. Your delight. No one delights in hurting people, not really. No one delights in things that are really bad for them. Addiction, the first thing that an addict will tell you is, this is not good for me, but I'm addicted to it. You know, that's not delight. That's an entrapment. And, you know, we all have addictions too that we have to work on and be careful. But I'm not talking about addictions. I'm talking about delight. Go with your delight. Man.
Beautiful.
Fantastic. Thank you for that.
And thanks for coming, Fred. And you're going to give us one last poem?
Sure. Yeah. I'll read this one because it kind of resonates with some of the things we've talked about, the unity as well as the two, and that mysterious other. The space beyond the sun, over the swirling rim of the Milky Way, is the hollow in the mustard seed that was planted in the furrow of your missing rib. You overflow the chalice, therefore breathe the night. You are so ancient, your glow is still approaching like a promise, like a pilgrim god, and you are still receiving your name. How do I know this? I don't. I taste it.
Wow.
Someone touched the soft spot on my crown and poured the nectar of emptiness into my bones. I won't say who, but her scent is pungent with star pollen. Her exhalation shimmers with the radiance of the dark. If I were one of those soul merchants who sell keys to the door that is always open, I would bottle her perfume and call it bewilderment.
Fantastic.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Fred, I think I should call you from now on the modern day Rumi.
Oh, no, oh, please.
Absolutely. You are a treasure, my friend. You are terrific.
You guys are treasure too. And after we close here, I want to be sure that I have your information and where your podcast can be found. Sure. And all, so I can follow you, because I've met some true friends here today.
Yes.
Thank you.
I've been waiting for this for a long time.
Especially because I thought you were somebody else the whole time.
That's great.
Wow.
It was great to meet you, Fred. And let me just tell everyone where they could find your books. On Amazon and any other platforms. I think I saw another platform you could buy your books.
Barnes and Noble. Yeah, the booksellers. There's one thing though. You can just Google my name on Amazon and it'll take you to my author's page. But you got to remember that my books are under my full name, which is Alfred K.
I was just about to say that. There's nothing that says Fred. It's all Alfred.
Right, Alfred K. Lamotte. Yeah.
Alfred K. Lamotte.
Or you could just go by the title, the Nectar of This Breath.
Well, we have the Nectar of This Breath is your book coming out April of this year.
Mm-hmm.
You already have written Savor Eternity, One Moment at a Time, mm-hmm. which was, I think, 2016. The Fire of Darkness, What Burned Me Away Completely, I Became. Incredible titles, by the way. Like each title is a poem itself. Wounded Bud, Poems for Meditation. And the fifth one I have here is Shimmering Birthless, A Confluence of Verse and Image. That is an amazing title, that subtitle.
Well,
like merging of verse and image. I love that.
Well, two of those books, the one with the long title and that one, were published by an artist, a Hawaiian artist named Rashani Rea.
I was going to ask you about that person.
They're art books. That's why they cost like $28, because they're large size, beautiful. I mean, her collages, her mandalas are amazingly beautiful and beautifully published. It costs a lot to publish them. I leave that up to her. And so her mandala is on one page and my poem is on the other.
Okay.
So they're really coffee table sized art books by her, published by her using my poems. Yeah, so and she chose those titles herself from my poems. Those are lines in the poem that she wanted to use as a title. Yeah.
I think there's titles are amazing. And you also have a blog?
Yeah, blog.
Called Uradiance.
Uradiance.
And that's URADIANCE.
Yeah, just like radiance with a U in front of it.
I'm pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah, Uradiance. It's
and that's is that a blog? That's something that you write once in a while?
I'm there a lot. Yeah, so and that includes not only poems, but discussions like we've had here, just thoughts and things. So and yeah, so the easiest thing to do is just Google Uradiance, that word URADINCE.
Okay.
See, or is a German word meaning original first. We get the word or, original, or means light in Hebrew. Or was an ancient continent, supposedly. So there's a lot of play in that title.
Yes.
Your radiance, but it's also that radiance that comes out of the primordial source.
It's my radiance.
Yeah.
Not your radiance.
Right.
Fred, thank you so much. And everyone, get some of these books, some of this poetry. It is life-changing. And in the past, it has actually changed my life and made me further awaken. Thanks to Jane for showing me Fred LaMotte's work. And today, I think I'm very thankful I have a new friend in Fred LaMotte.
Yeah, I have two new friends. Wonderful.
Yeah, we'll
Thank
definitely
you, RJ.
We'll definitely do this again one day, maybe when the next book comes out.
Okay. All right.
Okay, great seeing you, Fred. I'm just going to stop this right